Welcome everyone to Beyond Binary. I'm joined today by Beau Miles. Beau, would you like to introduce yourself? I don't want to put too many words in your mouth about what you do, but
sure. I'm a bearded bloke, although I cut it off a few days ago. It was resplendent a week ago, and now it's just a sort of, whatever. Look like a tradie that's just a stubble dude in a garden shed in Australia. I'm a writer and a YouTuber, and I'm a good bloke, I suppose. I've had my moments, but I'm okay. And thanks for having me on, Finn.
No, it's an absolute pleasure.
I'm recording.
Can you hear me now? Yes, it does.
Excuse me, my crayon is a monkey, which I find civilization.
Taking some interest in learning a bit more about technology, philosophy, and I like to...
I'm an educator. Absolutely. We're going to stay anonymous.
That's a cop-out.
The binary's gone. I thought Jingle was Blood Dutch for cheers.
Yeah.
I'm joined today by Beau Miles. Beau, would you like to introduce yourself? I don't want to put too many words in your mouth about what you do, but
Sure. I'm a bearded bloke, although I cut it off a few days ago. It was resplendent a week ago, and now it's just a sort of, whatever. Look like a tradie that's just a stubble dude in a garden shed in Australia. I'm a writer and a YouTuber, and I'm a good bloke, I suppose. I've had my moments, but I'm okay. And thanks for having me on, Finn.
no, it's an absolute pleasure. You've got a YouTube channel under your name, Beau Miles, and also a podcast. But the main thing is you've got a new book coming out, The Backyard Adventurer. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, was a little bit about adventure, what it means to you, and a bit about what can people take away in terms of like motivation and that kind of thing. So first of all, like, how do you define adventure? What for you is an adventure?
Well, it's a huge thing, right? So I did my PhD on defining that very thing, at least in the preamble chapters before getting stuck into big buzzwords like expedition and self-identity and reflection and whatnot. But adventure, I mean, it's very classically easy to define in that it's risk and competence pitted against certain geographies and people and societies, so it's a person going out with their tool bag full of what they can do, what they think they can do, and where their thresholds lie with the physical environment and maybe a kayak or a pair of shoes or a bag of food, so you've got all these ingredients and off you go and you test your mettle.
That's it. Yeah. And so why the backyard adventure? What changed? Because typically people think of adventure like one of your adventures was kayaking around the coast of South Africa, right? But do you have to go like far away to have a good adventure, do you think?
No, and we know that. I mean, you've led me down the garden path,
a little bit.
but it does have some certain aspects to it, because you think of adventure is not necessarily the top of the tree in terms of human endeavor. You might say exploration is further up the tree, and you might say that tourism or traveling is below adventure. So they've all got their certain tenets and their certain kind of anxiety rates or certain competencies that have to go with these sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, you can chew the fat over those kind of ingredients for a long time.
And what do you think, like, where's the right level? Because, the comfort zone is sort of an interesting one, isn't it? Because you want to kind of push yourself enough to be doing something challenging, but you don't want to make it too easy. Do you think it's better to just throw yourself into a big adventure? And what about preparation? Because I don't know how you actually prepare for your adventures,
Well, look, I try and give the impression that I'm a bit loose, which sort of
that's what it
draws people into the idea that you like the idea of things being serendipitous or very unexpected and very real and unknown. And that's for the most part pretty true, but it's also quite a calculated decision to make that choice. So it's somewhat contradictory in that you set off with just as many rules, but your rules aren't as structured as they would be with someone who's really well planned.
Right.
But you've thought about it just as much, and you're there for a particular reason in as many ways. So
and you still have to prepare everything, right? Like sort out your kind of personal life and business and everything before you go off and have an adventure, however many days it is, no?
Well, look, let's say you go for a backpack. You go hiking overnight, and you take 27 things in your backpack. They're very highly articulate 27 things, right? Now, if I go away and I've only got 3 things, that doesn't mean that I'm 24 things less prepared. It means that I've thought more long and hard about those 3 things, and they are going to dictate my experience hugely.
Absolutely.
And so, in many respects, adventure is about what you take, because we're so gear centric these days, and that's the tools of the trade.
Yeah, I want to touch briefly on that one, because you did a journey to work, right? And you got some publicity in, I think, in the newspaper, right? Where you just went to work, but you didn't bring anything with you. Just your clothes you were wearing, wasn't it? And a good pair of shoes and a sun hat, I think. And why did that? What was the idea behind that, and what did you get from it? You know.
Well, if I was to, at that time, if I was to set off walk to work, 80 kilometers via a few country roads and then a mega highway and then the, roads going through a city.
Right.
If I was to set off from morning one day with a big backpack full of techno gadgetry and freeze-dried food and electrolytes,
protein bars and all that.
Life would be a soda then. Now, if I don't take any of that stuff, life instantly becomes a very different ball game of what you see, what you don't see, what you pick up, what you don't pick up, what you observe and what you look for. And so my interaction with the world was very different based on what I had with me, or more to the point, what I didn't. Yeah, and so it shaped a very unique experience, or a unique experience, because of the things I had with me. The academics in the world call that techniques, our filtration of the world via the things we have with us.
And so would you recommend, maybe, like, if someone wants to go on an adventure, just think really about what you really want to take, and maybe, risk it and take less stuff, but think about how you could survive in that situation, kind of thing.
Totally. Well, I forget what they call themselves. I mean, in the Western world, with our commodified outdoor kind of adventure types, you go to an outdoor store and you can get a mini cheese grater and a coffee plunger that fits inside your undies. Everything's very small. And it's kind of like another miniaturized version of caravanning. Caravans have everything the house has nowadays, and camping is like everything a caravan has. And so we just keep getting smaller, but we still take everything.
Exactly.
And so, when you refine and you refine and you refine, you figure out what you really want, and your luxuries become less, your vices also become less. And it's fantastic. And I'm not into the big movement of gram weighing and all that stuff, like the ultralight crew, but I get what they're doing.
But you got to think about it to some extent. Now, I remember you were saying in your book at one point where you were on an adventure, you said 5 liters for each thing. No, 5 liters for food, 5 liters for stuff, and 5 liters for water. And that way you kind of had enough of a balance between the essentials.
Yeah, look, and I was, a classic bloody bloke that puts boxes around things and names and figures. And I do that sometimes and surprise myself. But that was very pragmatic, because that was all the room I had. And I thought, well, that's a nice little methodology.
A way to divide.
I used to share those kind of things with students, and they'd think, great, well, at least I've got boundaries around things, and I know I can't bust that bubble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm thinking of going on a long walk. I don't know if you've heard, here in Spain, there's a pilgrimage called Camino de Santiago. It's like Santiago's way. There's loads of different routes that all lead to Santiago de Compostela. It's like a religious pilgrimage. And so I want to do that. I'm thinking of doing like a really long walk, maybe start off like a 2-week one, but then maybe go from here right in the south all the way up. And would you recommend that people do that? And why would you recommend, if you do, people do things like that?
Absolutely. I've known lots of people that are doing that walk, or a variation of it. It's a very world famous pilgrimage, isn't it? And it's a fascinating walk. It's amazing why we're so attracted to walks that so many others have done. It's kind of like it's becoming part of a club. They're clearly doing it for a reason, but a crowd attracts a crowd when it comes to a famous walk. The Pacific Crest, the Appalachian, there's many walks in Australia like that. The coastal walk around the UK or around the south there. Is it the Southwest Walk? I think they're magnificent. I forget your original question, Finn, of why you're doing it, but
just
in ways. And
for me, it's actually kind of for the meditative experience, and also to some extent to kind of get away from society. So, in fact, this wasn't my original question, but maybe it's more interesting. I like using a hammock rather than a tent. I've just got my hammock.
Yeah, nice.
Maybe a little tarp. And so I'm thinking of doing maybe, typically people stay in these kind of inns along the way. Maybe do like every other day. One day I just find 2 trees and just sleep under them and see what happens.
Love it. Yeah. Look, in some respects, try not to have try not to map it via one night on, one night in trees. You just sort
See
of
how
go
it
with the
goes.
flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll find that I did the Southwest walk like that in the UK with my wife, and we ended up doing one night in a B&B, or one night in accommodation, then one night camping, and that was just fantastic. But it could have very easily, and when we talked about it in the end, we could have very easily just gone to towns each night and met the locals. Yeah, I mean, oh, whatever floats your boat, mate. I love the idea of a hammock. That's excellent.
Yeah, nice. Let me see. What about this? Do you ever feel like you're missing out on some of the experience if you're filming? Because I'm always torn as like when I go traveling, like, do I take photos or do I just try and enjoy the moment? As a filmmaker, like, how does that play out for you?
Finn, that's one of the most asked questions
I can imagine.
ever had.
Sorry for being so cliche.
No, you said it beautifully and poetically, and you've got a nice English twang. I'll answer that all day, mate. But in terms of the easiest way I can answer this is we all have our 24 hours rolled up into 168 hours a week, and we're all here. There's so many people write to me and say, "Beau, how do you fit all this stuff in? I want more time in my life," and you seem to. And the concept of more time is just bonkers. And in some way too, the concept of me filming a trip and not another trip, and then one being better than the other because I film one and not another, and this whole idea that pulling a camera out or a film device or a recording device or a notepad bursts your bubble or ruins the experience. I have no idea where that's come from. Why is it that me looking out to sea without any device is more pure than me looking out to sea with a bloody camera in my face? It is no different. It is just different. Yeah. It's no better or worse. It is just different. And it's not so much I'm talking to you as if I'm quite frustrated right now. But my point with it all is that look, we all just get our 24 hours a day, and how you interpret your day and you tell your story and you pass on that story in your own head or with a device is totally a sense of perception that you can adjust, mold, and push around yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then leading on from that, I just had the question about, I think to some extent you're a storyteller, you say like spin a good yarn. What for you is the point of storytelling? I mean, I don't want to be cynical about it. I love it, but why do you want to tell a story? Is it to motivate other people? Is it just to create a connection?
Well, I suppose a lot of us figure out not just what we're willing to do to get money or willing to do as a job or a pastime throughout your week, but a lot of us, and especially if you're kind of lucky and you have different options in life, you figure out what you're kind of good at and what resonates and what you're happy to do as a job. And
you kind of landed in that direction, right?
Yeah, look, there's so much I love about life, but it seems to check a lot of boxes off. If I've got one finger as an educator, one as a creator, one as someone who makes things, someone who wants to work for themselves, it sort of checks a lot of boxes, and I like doing it, and I've kind of found myself here half by default.
Exactly. So that kind of makes your life meaningful in those different ways, those different outlets.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a cliche in that, I don't really work as such. I'm really lucky to love what I do most days. And my day of leisure looks very similar to a day of work for me. Sometimes I'm recording myself and sometimes I'm not, but they're a very similar looking day.
Yeah. I really love your, when you do the marathon one, you did 1 mile an hour, and you ran your block. And then you did loads of tasks, loads of productive stuff. And one of the things that fascinated me in that was you made a kayak paddle or two out of salvaged junk wood that you'd found like on the side of the road. So you're just driving around, you pick up some wood, you stash it, and then you go, all right, I'll make something out of that. Lovely bits of timber. I mean, I love making stuff, and it's great,
I have great meaning for it. And you were talking, and maybe here I'm a walking contradiction too. Maybe when you say, when you go out and you film yourself as opposed to not filming yourself, one might feel better or different than the other.
Yeah.
In some respects, I'm very when I'm making things, I'm not anywhere else but the world. I'm very present when I'm making things.
Right.
Probably more than most things. And so hierarchically, making things is probably a really great space for me because it's very meditative and thought-provoking and problem-solving and bloody good. Yeah.
And then sort of building on that, this idea of like taking stuff that's been thrown away, other people's rubbish. The other day I was running I did a bit of trail running, I really like it. I saw this pair of shorts on the floor, a bit dusty, and I thought, I kind of need a pair of shorts. And then I was thinking, no, I can't just pick that up, can I? And then I was thinking of you, and I was thinking, yeah, you would pick that stuff up, wouldn't you? And another mate I've got who's like, yeah, pick it up, fucking give it a wash. It doesn't matter, go for it. So I picked them up. Absolutely. I took them home, I washed them, I bleached them, in fact, and then I've got a new pair of shorts. Done.
Mate, cracking. And you, oddly enough, they'll probably become your favorite pair of running shorts.
I do like them. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, they've already got this sort of a story in their junkyardy, and you're very enamored by those shorts, and they'll stick around for a long time.
So why do you think it's so frowned upon by society? Do you think it's just like because of kind of capitalism and consumerism, or do you think like, I don't know, it's just normal and everyone else is weird, or do you think it is a bit weird? What's there's a taboo around it, right?
I don't get it, mate. I don't know. Resource is resource. I like things to last for as long as they can, and fix them until they're threadbare, and then give them a send off that's appropriate, whatnot.
I don't know. Recycle them into something else, right?
I mean, retail therapy is alive and well in our culture. People love the idea of buying things. That it's such a reward mechanism for their jobs that often they don't like. And I get why people buy things, but I don't buy it myself.
No. Yeah. I'm actually doing a challenge at the moment. I like challenges, So what I'm doing at the moment is try not to buy anything new that I can really avoid, So
good man.
Like try and get secondhand stuff, or even try and make it myself. I've got some paints, so I wanted to make a paint rack. So I just got some cardboard boxes, and I just figured it out and just made one with glue and cardboard.
Beautiful.
And I was so happy with it at the end. Gave it a little lick of paint, with a spray can. Lovely in the end. Really happy with
can
that.
do. Yeah, no, it's excellent. And we don't often do that.
Right.
I think its claim to fame is that it's the most produced and longest running TV show on the planet. And that's a Play School here in Australia, kids show.
Oh yeah.
It was the first weekly show to show in Australia in 1950, whatever it was, when the first broadcast, and it's never stopped since. Thousands and thousands of episodes.
Still going now.
Yeah, and their whole shtick from the get-go has been that none of their toys and none of their things are store-bought. It's all made by the presenters and the props department. So it's just, there's a whole, I watch it now, and it's the best thing on television it's the only thing my daughter watches, because it's just this, everything's cardboard and old milk containers, and it's just grouse. I love it.
Everyone can make stuff out of that. It's a bit like Blue Peter. They used to do stuff like that, didn't they? Blue Peter, and there was a really cool.
I have no idea who Blue Peter is, but I like the
it's a bit of an institution in the UK.
I don't know whether he's a porn star or he's a news presenter. I don't know.
Be a good name, wouldn't it? There was another one called Art Attack, where it's the same thing, just a kids show, and they just make stuff out of cardboard and paint and sticky back plastic. Amazing.
I like it.
Yeah, nice.
Now explain to the viewers what's this elephant thing behind you? Is that covering up something? Is that a mirror or something?
It's just a mattress. Just a mattress.
Oh, okay, very good.
We got a mate coming to visit, and he slept in here last night. So I was like, all right, quickly make it look good with a nice elephant throne. I got on a beach. There was a guy just waving it on the beach, singing a song. And he came up to me. He's like, "Do you want to buy it? I'm singing a song for it." And I was like, go on then. That's great.
There's the story too. Good man.
I wanted just, if I could ask you a couple final questions. One term that I read in your book that was really interesting was awaysick. Can you explain a little bit about the concept of homesick and awaysick? What's the difference between the two?
It's a good pickup, Finn. It almost didn't make the final cut. The producer or my book editor thought it was a bit odd, and I loved it. I
like the concept.
So many people are familiar with homesick,
right?
But then, what do you feel when you're away, and you feel awaysick? It's a reverse feeling of homesick. So when you're away and you feel like you just got to get home, and you feel like being back in the comfort of your own surrounds and your kitchen and your mum and your favorite cup of tea and your dog or whatever it might be. But what if is it when you're away and you're on some deserted beach somewhere and you've just had the time of your life, but all of a sudden you feel like you don't want to be in that place. So what you are repelling against is the sand that's under your feet, the kind of milk that you may have just drunk, or the lack of tea that you're not drinking or whatever. It's very much born out of where you are, not where you want to be. And so I got that after 5 months in Africa. I got awaysick. I was, and I hate to say it because I loved the continent and I loved South Africa, but I was sick of probably myself in that space, not the space itself. That's probably
It was
what
a smell,
is.
wasn't it? It's a smell that brought it on.
Well, that was homesickness that led to away sickness. Yeah,
Right.
you're dead right. And
Yeah.
that was eucalypts. And I've never had that a day in my
smell,
life.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
I smelled gum trees and it was bang. And it wasn't a day or a week or a month. It was a moment. It was very much a second or two that I thought, wow, this is
really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. Nice. There's one last question I want to ask you before we talk about like what's next, what you're doing in the future, what films you're working on, if you can say a little bit about it. But
sure, mate,
you talk about gum trees, and you talk about when you did you also paddled to work, right? You went down local rivers and it was all kind of overgrown and a bit abandoned. And so I was wondering, what's your take on like this kind of wider question of the environment, the climate crisis, rewilding? I don't know if you're familiar with that topic. Do you think that needs to happen? Should we sort of cut back on farmland a little bit, try and rewild, let nature take over again? What are your thoughts on that? Because I don't think you've talked about it as far as I know in any of your videos.
No, you're dead right. And it's becoming a bit of it's not becoming, it's been a hot topic for many decades here, especially if you listen. And yeah, I'm familiar with the rewilding concept that's sort of born out of Britain and George Monbiot and that sort of crew.
Yeah.
The
Feral's really good. Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. And yeah, look, there's many omissions in my book and that I kind of start off on ideas and I nibble at the edges of some sort of meatier topics like the one you're talking about.
I guess you've got to slim it down to something.
Yeah, I wanted to keep the Backyard Adventure very much about
adventuring,
isolated stories, but give a context or a subtext with why they came about, which is where it would have fit, right? Your concept you're talking about. But these days, yeah, I do find that I've very much slipped into this kind of green warrior, I don't know, advocacy space, kind of by mistake. I don't really want to be here because that's not, it's not where my look, it's fundamentally probably where my worldview sits, but that's not where I want to be as a storyteller. I think it's a bit, it's challenging. It's not always fun here. And,
Sure.
and you become a very much a political something. And
it's hard to separate it from the politics of the situation.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
but you did the video right about the trees that you planted, like one tree. What was it? It wasn't one tree an hour. What was it? Like every minute or something?
Tree a minute for 24 hours. Yeah, it was ace. It was an excellent experience, Finn, and freaking hard too. I thought I'd nail it. And
you look smashed at the end of that, man.
Oh, dude, I was like, I'm a pretty physical kind of fella, and I've been doing stuff my whole life that's pretty physical, but that drilled me.
Yeah,
and that was kind of my first foray into an adventure of like super local. I didn't leave the paddock for that 24 hours. And yet that was a very thoughtful, physical, rewarding, challenging thing. And very much on what you're talking about. I suppose what that does lend itself to is that I believe in rewilding, but I also believe more in rewilding with human hands, because
does it have to be only nature, or can we guide it into some way?
Well, Australia has screwed up staggeringly, but we have got so many invasive species in Australia that would take over a lot more than the native species if we just let things go rampant.
So you need to manage it to some extent, no?
Well, I think so. And look, I have no idea. I don't know the answers here, right? But I do see that if you let a paddock go on its own now, it's going to go back with the strongest weeds. And I think just nursing things back before we can say, righto, hands off and let it take its course.
Absolutely. I'm totally on the same page as you. I think like if we can find some like lower maintenance way of managing land, do you know what I mean? Where we can have like restore maybe these symbiotic relationships. I don't know if you've heard of like syntropic farming and stuff like that, where you can kind of grow a food forest. There's very diverse, and it can bring back that biodiversity. And you just basically kind of lightly prune a lot of the trees and plants, so the organic matter like builds up the soil and nutrients and all that. So it seems like there's a lot of good options where it's not just we just have to not touch it for 30 years, because you're right. Like at the end of the day, the ecosystem doesn't just magically balance itself, especially not in some countries where these invasive species have come in. I mean, bindweeds almost everywhere, isn't it nowadays? And
I hate to say it, but I think it's just a touch arrogant for us to say we're going to just hands off now. We've meddled so vehemently for hundreds of years, and I mean meddled. We've ripped up the innards of the earth, and now we say, righto, here's a lovely philosophical method. Let's just stop and let it do its thing. Well, it will, right? But it'll either take 20,000 years, it'll take 1,000. So I like the idea of giving it a helping hand, because Christ, we're just another animal and we're smart enough to know that we can help.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely with you there on that one. No, good stuff. I just wanted to know what's coming next. Have you got any films you're working on? Another book? What's next on your radar?
A bit from A and B column. I've got another book and a half on the way. I thought this was a bonkers thing to do. I talked to my publisher and said, look, I've got two ideas. I might just start both and see which ones comes out. Have like a boxing match between two books and
see whichever
one's the stronger. Yeah, totally. Yeah, because and one is starting to pull punches a bit more than the other. So I'm just going to keep going with that. And it's very metaphorical, not just in the boxing match. But that's happening. And that's still a while away though, Finn. That won't see the light of day until next year late. Films, meanwhile, there's a massive backlog of films because COVID kicked our ass, but it means we shot a lot. We just couldn't produce a lot. So we've got lots of footage in the can that needs lots of studio time here in the garden shed that you're looking at me now. So there'll be a film come out in the next few days, we're thinking, and then a couple of weeks later, and so on and so forth, right through to the end of the year. Yeah.
And that's Beau Miles on YouTube, isn't it? Just search your name on there and people will find you.
Yeah, Beau Miles on YouTube. And my book it's exceptional, Finn. It's one of the best books ever written. It's going to be a classic for the next few hundred years. Yeah, that's The Backyard Adventure, and that's available in all across Europe and the world now. So go for it.
Stuff. Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks very much for your time, Beau. I think we'll finish up there. But it's been a real pleasure, and thanks so much for coming on Beyond Binary.
Thanks for the chat, mate. You're a good, friendly soul. I like the elephants behind you, and I'll chat to you in the next installment down the track.
Nice one. Thanks very much.